anyone I know that is happy financially and manifesting with ease financially, it's because they're doing it from their authentic self. Rather than pushing the money away, it's projecting that I deserve, I am loving, I'm worthy of money. From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. So today we are diving into money, how to manifest money, how to look at money, how to think about money from a place of empowerment instead of a place of fear or scarcity or lack. And I know money can be a really fearful topic, a topic that might induce a little bit of panic or shame inside your body. So I wanted to take a second before we even dive in today to just take a deep inhale together. And just check in with your body for a second. Knowing that we're going to dive into money today, what comes up for you? Where in your body do you feel any tension or tightness? Fear, panic? Maybe you even feel expansion. You feel empowered, excited. Just check in with that for a second. And you don't need to change it or shame it or make the feeling go away. Just acknowledging what is coming up is perfectly fine and is your first indicator of how you're going to start to unpack and unravel around money. As we dive in today, we're going to cover part one, which is really all about understanding what our subconscious is telling us about our beliefs around money. We may have a conscious belief, but what did we learn from the people and peers and family and society around us about how we might be subconsciously thinking about money? And how might that be blocking us from actually getting the abundance that we want out of life? We dive into some questions from the community, and we also talk about the importance of expanders, masculine worth energy, which I almost want to call that unapologetic deservingness energy, how to cultivate that. And in part two next week, we're going to dive into how to actually take all of this unblocking and put it into practice. What are bridge manifestations? How can those help us get there? Money portals. And also diving into shifting that sort of spiritual concept that you cannot be spiritual and also be abundant. How do we reframe that? Because that belief can be holding us back as well. And stay tuned for the end because I'm going to do a little recap to summarize what we learned today and what you guys can take away from this and start putting things into practice on your own.
And now a word from our partners.
So as we're easing into the chillier months here in the Northern Hemisphere, one thing that typically would go completely neglected for me is my body skincare. And I would, have pants on and sweatpants on and everything would be covered up. So why do I really need to care about my body skincare? But my legs would get so dry and my skin would get crackly and itchy, especially if I was over on the East Coast with those harsh winter winds. And the Osea skincare products have been my absolute saving grace when it comes to this. So here has been my go-to routine. First, I'll do a little dry brushing throughout the body to loosen all the lymph, get everything going. And then when I jump in the shower, I use the Undaria Cleansing Body Polish. So this is a microbiome-friendly, exfoliating, and mineral-rich body polish. It is the only exfoliator that I've ever used that actually works and slough off the dead skin without causing irritation or dryness afterwards. Then I'll follow up with our Undaria Algae Body Oil. You guys have heard me talk about this. It is the most moisture-rich, skin barrier supporting oil that really helps to replenish your dry skin and give you that glow. And then for those spots that are just so hard to keep moisturized during those winter months, like your elbows or your hands or wrist, feet, kneecaps, any of those spots, I use the Undaria Algae Body Butter and just put a little coating on that to give it the extra support it needs. All of their products are clean, vegan, cruelty-free, climate neutral certified, so you never have to choose between your values and the best skin. So don't let your skincare go to the wayside just because it may be a different time of year and you're not used to giving that extra body glow. It is so worth it, and I promise getting into bed with that soft, comfy skin is one of the best feelings in the entire world. And they have all of my favorite products that I mentioned here in a gift box set where you can get a little taste of each one of these items. You can use the code TBM10 at checkout for 10% off your first order site-wide at oseamalibu.com. Again, that's OSEA Malibu.com, and the code is TBM10 for 10% off. And you can also get an extra 10% off plus free shipping if you have your favorite products delivered on repeat with their Subscribe and Save program. So head to our show notes or oseamalibu.com and use the code TBM10.
All right, on to the episode.
Today we're diving into one spot, how to manifest money. We're getting into it. We have so many questions in the community. Welcome, Lacy.
Thank you. I think this will be a good one. It's interesting because, money really comes down to just a couple of things that are going to sound really redundant in our work. But I think the questions from community are going to help show that it's a very nuanced thing. So it's a super simple thing once you get it, but there's just nuances in the way that tests present and the expansion needed, et cetera. So let's just try to dig in.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to maybe start with like the principle of the manifestation work. So if someone's brand new to this work and this modality and how we think about manifestation, just even talking about the impact of the subconscious, because if they can understand that, then it's like, great, how does that apply to money? So where do we manifest from? Get us back to our roots there.
Let's go to basics. So this has been fun because we've been working on the book. If people don't know, we have a book coming out next year, finally, and I've been having to dig into all of these like super basic concepts again, but getting nuanced about them. And the really important thing to remember is that we don't manifest from our thoughts, right? So old manifestation rhetoric out there talks about think positive, be in the positive, pretend to be what you want to be until it comes. And that's just not where we're manifesting from. We're manifesting, as many people, if you've been here for a while, have heard me say 10,000 times, but I think continuing to repeat is really great because that's how it integrates. We manifest from our subconscious mind. It means everything that we witnessed and experienced from the age of 0 to 7. The most impactful years being 0 to 3. So when it comes to money, this is humongous. It means whatever conversations were happening around money, judgments were happening around money. If you grew up in a community that was like extremely reflective of lack, if you are in a career or manifesting something about money that in childhood you never witnessed anybody that was successful in this right before, your subconscious has no frame of reference of how you can have abundance in this lane or in general. So really, all of the money work comes down to the subconscious. It comes down to our 3 principles that we always talk about: unblocking, expanding, and aligned action. However, there are some nuanced bits and some targeted places to look at that we'll talk about today, but you are not manifesting from your thoughts. I don't care how much you're visualizing, whatever your vision board shows that you're going to manifest in the way of finances, career, things that finances contribute to, it's just not going to happen unless your subconscious has seen to believe that it's possible. That's the expansion. That it's unblocked. That means any pain, shame, witnessed or experienced around finances and money growing up have literally been integrated in the subconscious state, which is what we do through our deep imaginings. It's our proprietary hypnosis process, meaning that you've gone down there, you've investigated, and you've seen oh, maybe I did grow up in wealth, but because we were wealthy, we were really insecure and nervous about people knowing about it. Therefore, I picked up or I witnessed the shame that if I have money, if I make money, if I am successful, people won't like me because that's what I experienced in childhood. We were more wealthy than people in our community. I mean, it's so vast, and it just requires a little bit of digging and unblocking. So that's the unblocking piece. And then of course the aligned action comes down to the non-subconscious work, but much more of either boundary work, jumping off cliffs, which we can talk about, passing tests. So I'm excited. Like, let's dig in.
That was such an unlock. I remember hearing you on another podcast way in the beginning talking about money. It might have even been the Luke Story episode from way back in the day.
Which is such a good one for us to link for this.
So good. But it was so interesting hearing, like, I think sometimes when people come into money, they're like, oh, do I have a lack mindset or abundant mindset? And yes, that is important. And that's something you're going to pick up. But why you have that? What stories did you witness around creating that? And how are you operating energetically with money that is either pushing it away or pulling it in towards you because of your actions, your programming, your expansion, what you think is possible, all of that? One thing I want to start off with is really unpacking some of those stories. What are some of the stories? You named some of them here, but like when you're looking at, and in our Unblock Money course, one of the first section is like a huge inventory of what your inner child witnessed around money. And then we have a huge inventory around shadow you picked up around money. But thinking about what your caregiver's relationship to money is, what they think about money, what their perspectives or viewpoints were about money, how they interacted with money, how they used it. What are some of the things that have come up for you in your life, Lacy, where when you were unpacking all this stuff, you're like, oh shit, these are all the stories that were looping for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're the obvious ones, right? I was raised by two young 20-year-old parents who did not have any money at the time when they had me. They were waitressing, and I think my dad was a ranch hand on a ranch. And there's always this funny story that I asked my dad, I'm like, can we go buy this thing? And he was like, we don't have money for it. And I was like, no, we can just go to that machine that gives us money, and that was the constant. I remember my mom being like, we're writing a hot check, don't tell anybody. It was that in those really informative years. So that's the obvious, right? We all have, even in our conscious state, that we can reflect back to the obvious things that we heard around lack. But the surprising things that you'll start to recognize when you are doing the Unblocked Money course inside the pathway and you're doing the deep imaginings, it's the stuff that you didn't even remember that sometimes is way more impactful than just the normal looping of either shadow, which we can break down a little bit more, and languaging programming from your caretakers. I even remember this thing, and this isn't related to money, but it's related to how weird and sticky little things are that are looping in our subconscious can be. I remember a really big turning point of where I had to grow up and kind of be a cool kid and start to be more in my ego. It was one of those examples when we talk about shadow. If you're new to this work or if you're new to the concept of shadow and psychology in general, shadow is simply anything you witnessed or experienced that caused pain or shame, primarily shame. And in that, because when we're young, we need to be safe and secure and loved, we will simply, and so here, I'll give an example of the story, we'll simply go, oh, I'm not going to be like that anymore, or I'm not going to do that. It's called putting it in your shadow. You literally almost forget that this is a quality of yours in an effort to be loved for survival. And so that's what we call in this work, like putting up onion layers. But I remember this time in third grade, it was so vivid, Mrs. Matthews' class, this boy that I had a crush on, I don't remember his name vividly, oddly, but I remember I was really into Power Rangers. I was really innocent at that age. And I remember that it was raining, and so we were doing recess inside, and I was talking with my friends, and we were in the group, and Danny was there. Danny was his name, but I don't remember his last name. And we were talking about Power Rangers, and he was like, Power Rangers are so lame. And it just brings up this thing that I remember a client in a session once who grew up around abundance, but she had one cool girl that she really followed. She was the sidekick of, who didn't grow up in abundance and had such disdain. It was that grunge period, like such disdain for people who were successful or had money. This was something that my client had totally forgotten about. But in that moment, in order to be cool and accepted by her, she had to hate money. Money wasn't cool. People with money weren't cool. They were the problem. They were the man. I mean, just whatever. She didn't even remember this. But when she was able to unlock that, because she had grown up around expansion and abundance, she started to manifest money. So it's like the really fascinating, nuanced little imprints that are down there that we're not even aware of, that is literally pushing money away in our life that we have to address. So that really just comes back to the concept we're manifesting from our subconscious. But broader stroke examples can be, even you have great stories about this, Jessica.
Yeah, I was even thinking about this one messaging from my dad always rings so vividly for me is when he would talk about like athletes signing mega $100 million deals. And he would just think it was so insane and so ridiculous and bad. It was like, I can't believe all this money is going to these athletes to do this, where teachers and doctors don't make anything. Money will change people. Money will make people bad. They'll become greedy and whatever. Greed is like the root of all evil. Money is the root of all evil. Like a lot of those narratives, because I think he was so in his shadow, feeling like he could never be there. So it was easier to judge than to like be up there with all of those people. And that also speaks for like, he was very like a blue collar worker, didn't graduate college, didn't do good in school. And so he kind of went step by step for his career. And it's so funny because that part of his story for me was so expansive, because I was like, oh, you can have come from no sort of credentialed background and just like go in guns blazing and like learn how to move inside of a system or a company or like learn any skill set. But for him, he took that as like, oh, I'm less than because I don't have that credential, or I don't have that schooling, or I don't have that fancy company, so he always had this sort of shadow towards money. And so I really had to look at that. And then some of the other ones are, you have to save money because you never know when it's going to be taken away from you, especially watching my parents divorce. It was like, you never know when you're going to have to go back to work or pick up a new job, or everything the rug could get pulled out from underneath you. There was a lot, especially around the broader family, of the government will take all your money. It's not even worth it making that much money because they'll just take it all. A lot of that sort of programming. Investing is only for these kinds of people. Investing isn't for everyone. And of course, there are barriers to entry there, but it's like, if I had that mindset and I wanted to keep that mindset and I wasn't aware of pulling that from my subconscious, then I wouldn't read an investment book. You know what I mean? I wouldn't pick up books to learn about that. I wouldn't talk to people around me who are investing and be like, what do you guys do? What's your portfolio breakdown of like, how do you make money when you have barely any money coming in? How do you put a little bit aside for investing? That's how you start to expand past those limiting beliefs. And then other ones we saw for the community is like a lot of jealousy and envy when others have money or wealth, scoffing at them or expressing disdain. Like, I can't believe they're wearing that bougie item or something like that. A helplessness towards money. This was an interesting one. And I think this comes up a lot for people who grew up with a certain level of safety around money from their family, but feeling that someone's always going to bail them out. So like they can get themselves in like a precarious situation. They can overspend. They can run themselves down their savings, but they're like, well, my parents can bail me out. And that actually blocks them from having their abundance portal come in because they're kind of waiting for that caretaking to happen. Money makes you valuable versus money serves as a function. You're only as valuable as your money. That's a huge one that I've seen pop up. There's so many.
It's honestly endless, and it's really just tailored to whatever one person's experience was. And I even see, it's so interesting, I won't name specifics, but this family of like really great wealth, all of the kids, there were 4 kids, received like a really great trust fund, and not one of them have gone on to be able to accomplish anything. The wealth came from their father worked for the family company. It was this like really big industrial company in the Midwest. And so they grew up around, it wasn't like it was just handed to their dad. I've always been so curious to talk to them to see what that block is, that all 4 kids just like couldn't, even they would follow their dreams, they would start careers that were meaningful to them, but they couldn't break through a barrier or a ceiling, which is obviously just, shadow block based. And then in their town, they were the only wealthy family in town because of where this particular industrial plant was located. And so there was so much shadow, which could be the thing. They weren't relatable to anybody in town, and everybody had envy towards them. And that, so it's just so interesting to see it on both sides, whether you grew up in poverty, in middle class, or in wealth. Everybody has blocks around this. And of course, we'll get into this probably later in the episode, but the love money connection. You could have grown up in tremendous abundance, and you could have grown up in tremendous expansion, not have a ton of blocks around money, but you do in love. And because they're so connected, and we can talk about that and get deeper, that could be the thing. It's so crazy. It really is whatever your subconscious is holding on to, and the space in your life that's being blocked by things that should be filled by money.
I mean, even thinking of that one example, and I've actually have a few people who have a similar thing where they have the stability or safety net there, and then they have difficulty carving their own path and carving their own way with that. And I think, at least for the people that I've seen in my life, part of that is that their authentic soul wants to make money in a way that is very different from what they saw their parents doing. So if their parents did it in a very traditional way, if they want to go and be a painter or an artist, they're like, well, the money's not going to come from that because I have only seen it come through this other route. That I feel they feel really expanded in. But when it comes to the other route, it's kind of dried up. And I think it's also the expansion piece is so important here because as you're unpacking and pulling apart all of these beliefs and understanding whoa, this is what, my parents' beliefs were around money. This is what they did for career. This is how they spent it. This is how they use money. Was money used for control? Was it used to show love when you didn't get love from family members? All of those things. But then having the modeling of, okay, what do I authentically want? What income portals would feel good to have money come through that might be different? And who can I get around me to switch the mindset that maybe I was programmed around? Because I think when you have parents or caregivers or family members with those beliefs, especially if they still have those beliefs, there's that inner child part of you that's like, oh, I don't want to go against my parents' belief because if I do that, then they won't like me.
One that I would see that was really common as well, they would be like, oh no, I grew up in middle class, abundance. There was, there wasn't a lot of lack around. But even the simplicity of your authentic self and soul desires something that it never witnessed in childhood. So if your parents were in finance and a teacher, but you are, like you were saying, maybe you're a director, you're an artist, and you just never witnessed anybody successful in the arts around you, that would be the lack of expansion. But also furthermore, I would see this a lot in clients that when they were young, they looked at their parents' career as prison. The parents weren't around really. The parents weren't happy. Yes, they had their needs met, but the parents were miserable doing things that weren't their dreams. And we don't even think that on a subconscious level, we imprint, oh, if I'm successful in a career, I'll be in prison. And so something as simple as that and the lack of expansion in the arts is why you maybe went to art school and you've been doing art for the last 10 years, but you just can't get your art career off the ground. It's that simple. So I love that you touch on those aspects because we're just trying to bring to mind so many different examples of what this could be on a subconscious level that's literally pushing abundance away from you.
I think another thing to note here is societal, cultural, systemic issues, all of those things too that play a factor into what's happening in your neural architecture. Like you were saying, the community around you, what did you witness outside in society that was mirroring that back? So it's so important to look at, okay, this was the story, but what did I take away from it? What did my little child brain, what assumptions did it make? What conclusions did it draw from what I witnessed?
Two things. You mentioned cultural, you mentioned so many really important factors, but one that I would see come up as well all of the time in my practice is religious programming around money. There's a tremendous amount of religious programming out there, depending on what religion one was raised in, especially even if you don't practice anymore, of that money can be bad, greed can be bad. The last note that you just said that's so important for anyone manifesting anything, how did your inner child interpret the experience? Because that's the only thing that's manifesting right now, your inner child. So it's 100%. When people are they're listening to the podcast maybe, and they're like, oh, and maybe they don't do the work and they're trying to discern how to manifest something. Whatever your conscious mind is making of the experience means absolutely nothing, because again, we don't manifest from our thoughts. It's 100% the imprintation in your subconscious that your inner child interpreted the experience, the trauma, the pain, the situation as. That is what's manifesting. So it's just such a really important point to digest right now. If you want to manifest, your inner child's in the driver's seat. So you have to get down there and you have to get on the same page in a subconscious state to create those new neural pathways and beliefs that project something different. Rather than pushing the money away, it's projecting that I deserve, I am loving, I'm worthy of money.
As someone that talks a lot for their job, and I'm not just talking about podcasting, I am on calls all day with our teams, on Zooms, on working sessions, on phone calls, constantly talking. And that really starts to wear on your throat. Sometimes at the end of the day, I feel like my throat is so fatigued. But one of the products I absolutely love using that helps me support my throat in this is the Beekeeper's Naturals Propolis Throat Spray. Now, you've probably heard my emphatic love for Beekeeper's Naturals products. They are reinventing the medicine cabinet, creating clean, effective products powered by the beehive and backed by science. Their founder, Carly, was truly looking for an alternative for so many different products out there because she wasn't able to take a lot of the medicines that we find in our typical medicine cabinet. And she wound up discovering that a lot of the ingredients that are used in the beehive are so supportive to our immune systems. They're packed with vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and B vitamins and all the things that are good and fantastic for our body, our brain, our immune, all of the things. So not only is their Propolis throat spray soothing to my throat, but because it is made with propolis, which is the defender of the hive, bees use propolis to line the walls and keep germs out of their hive. So when we use it on our scratchy throats, it helps us combat free radicals, damage to the body. It helps with good gut bacteria. It has vitamins B, C, and D, zinc, antioxidants, and 300 other plus beneficial compounds. So not only is it soothing my throat, but it's also helping my immune and my body from the inside out. I love using the throat spray, especially with the nasal spray when traveling or going to be around big crowds. When I do both at once, the nose and throat, it helps coat the lining of my mucous membranes in my nose and actually acts exactly how bees intend the propolis to act, which is lining the walls of it and catching any germs before they go in. So when I go on a flight or I'm going in a big crowd, I'll use the throat spray on my throat, I'll use the nasal plus spray on my nose, and that really helps protect me from any outside germs that I may be surrounding myself with. I especially love their nasal spray too because they not only have propolis just like the throat spray, but also oregano oil, eucalyptus, and xylitol and saline. So it helps really stimulate the mucous membranes in there to catch any free radicals and germs and leaves you in the best state for fighting all of that off. And we have a special discount for you guys. If you want to test out any of the Beekeeper's Natural products or you're looking to restock again, you can use the code TBM to receive 20% off. Again, that is code TBM, all caps, for 20% off. Check out at the Beekeeper's Natural website or check the link in our show notes and then type in the code TBM on checkout to get your discount. Okay, so in the morning formula, obviously taking that inventory, unblocking from all that stuff, really diving in, using our hypnotic audios to really dive into the subconscious and witness what is happening down there and like really deeply understanding, feeling that. But the other really crucial part, and I've seen this, it's almost like the unblocking was so important for me to get from like step A to B, but then to really see a flow, that expansion was so integral of being around people, of how they were operating with money, how they were spending money, how they were opening income portals, the ease in which they were doing so. I feel like that took my financial journey up to a completely different level because that expansion was like, oh, I'm getting this reflected everywhere. Okay, I can do this.
I totally agree. Very similar situation for me. So for me, it happened, this expansion like you talked about. It was such a game changer when you were totally surrounded by people who were expanded and successful financially. So it was so interesting to even look at my process in that. One thing I want to note is having grown up with young parents that were very much in lack. But I did go to a school. We always fake that I live at my aunt's address. And so I went to an elementary school with the most affluent people in our town. And I never had the imprintation that they're bad because they have money because I felt less than. I always went, I fucking want what they have because it seems like a much easier life. And so that was like at least one hurdle I didn't have to cross. So I've actually been very curious my entire life about anybody that did come into my orbit that had a form of success. And I wasn't surrounded by many. Growing up in a really small town, my dad had 2 friends, only one of which we were close to that he had been like kicked out at 14, whatever, started a construction company, was very successful. And so I always was curious and I would ask questions and just be interested. And then even getting to the point now, I would say that from 30 to 38 is when I've manifested everything I've ever wanted. And it didn't happen like Jessica. I think, Jessica, you're really surrounded by very successful friends. From what I've gathered, it seems like a lot of your friends are doing what they love and they're doing a really good job. I didn't have that, so mine happened incrementally. So I remember even when I was doing holistic services before I launched manifestation, I had one client that came from a lot of wealth and she was so down to earth and so cool and so open. That was one of my first expansion points. Or when I was teaching at a preschool in Santa Monica, everybody was wealthy. And that I talk about this all the time, that I remember talking to the universe. And I was like, if I ever have children one day, I have to have the means that these people have because I want to provide this type of childhood that I didn't have for my children. And they were tremendously expansive to me. And then of course, when I met Max, because he comes from an abundant background, it just like kept opening that expansion portal more and more. Max so much because he's into business like I am and into investing like I am. So we could have those conversations and I could really see what people do in investing. So like what Jessica is saying, it's so crucial. It's so crucial. And if you don't have access, obviously we're in Los Angeles, we have a lot of access to successful people, but if you don't, such beautiful access points are finance books and finance podcasts and finance YouTube videos, because they're really going to explain until your subconscious gets it, especially if you're digesting them from people like I've always loved Ramit. But he like is so honest and open about his childhood and background to the point of saying like he didn't know this as a child, but his parents, I think it was his dad, would go and I think it was, if I'm remembering this correctly, like chalk the soccer field so that the kids could play soccer for free. He comes from, different to me because obviously we didn't immigrate here and we were privileged in that way, but going to resources where people truly don't come from a super abundant background, but have taken such an interest and they're like masters at this stuff. That's a beautiful access point for starting to expand your subconscious mind if you're not surrounded by people who are successful.
I think too, one of the narratives that came up for me is because we have like the full spectrum of human qualities within us. There was this fear of like, okay, if I surpass my dad or my mom financially, what is that going to do for our relationship? Can I still have a loving, nurturing relationship with them if I'm now exceeding their income level, right? So there was fear there. And then there was also fear of like falling into a trap and not having enough examples of people who had money but felt generous and gave it back and like, we're doing all of these things with it that I thought were creative and inspiring, and like there was a flow of it. It wasn't just collecting a lot of money to hoard it. It was like having money and being able to give back and operate. Like, what does giving back look like? Is it donating to a charity? What are those things that feel good? And as I started to get more and more examples of like, okay, when you make this amount, here's one thing you could do. Here's one thing you could do now for $5. How can you start putting those practices into place now? And I think those two unlocks were really huge at giving myself permission to even want to have a lot of abundance. Before that, I was like, I don't like, I want it because it gives me freedom. It checks off my authentic code of being able to take care of that part for myself. But that block of, oh, if I have it, can I trust myself to do the right thing with it? Can I, have the same relationship with my parents? Is that going to be in the way? And until I remedied that and was like, okay, this is not going to hold me back. I'm definitely going to be able to figure out the right things to do with it. I'm going to figure out how to even give back now in the meantime as I'm like growing that. That was so huge.
Yeah. And everybody has different versions of that, and it would make sense that you were feeling those feelings with your dad and that programming of like what these athletes are doing with their money. So it's another good example of like really getting in touch with your inner child and seeing what hurdles do you need to overcome in order to feel like it's okay to be in abundance.
And it's interesting. I remember as a kid being like, yeah, Dad, that makes a lot of sense. And then as I got older, I was like, well, who's making the most money off the players? Like, is there the owner there? And what are the other things that you have to take into consideration? And it was really from the perspective of broadening my sense that it was a zero-sum game and that by them having that, other people couldn't. And so it's kind of opening my perception of what that even means. And if I'm going to shame someone else for getting money, how am I ever going to feel comfortable getting my own money, right? Like I have to be able to change that belief system and shift that, because otherwise, if I'm shaming someone else for getting money, then I'm not going to think I'm deserving of it, or I'm going to think I'm going to be bad for deserving it. So it's kind of like changing that perception and evolving that over time and holding space for my dad's perspective and saying like, okay, I can see the both and in that situation. I can see how you think that, teachers and doctors can be paid more for their work and at the same time, not being mad at someone else who's making money off of their hard work as well.
Completely. And just recognizing that your dad's perspective, like you highlighted, is just, it's a trauma reaction. It's really probably not even his authentic perception of it. Could be, but most likely not.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of brings to the next step of this masculine worth energy. So this is that commanding, unapologetic, deservingness energy when it comes to making decisions about money and how you're utilizing money and how you're opening income portals and putting yourself out there and career and all of those things. Talk about that a little bit, Lacy.
It's just a manifestation. There's a lot of conversation around manifesting is actually in your feminine. And though there are very feminine aspects of it, of course, you're working with your subconscious, you're working with your inner child, you're working with magic in a lot of ways. There's also a lot of masculine to it. I read energy, like they don't really absorb that. They just kind of run with the flow of what they've always heard in manifestation, spirituality. But in fact, I would argue that when it comes to manifesting money, it's really root chakra stuff. It's really it's really a masculine energy. It doesn't mean that it's a male energy. It's just much more of a commanding, deserving energy than it is free-flowing heart space surrender. I think it becomes that eventually once you've unblocked and expanded enough and your trust muscle is strong enough. But when you're still rehabbing inner child imprintation and beliefs that don't believe one deserves what they're asking for or what their authentic self is desiring, really being able to access that deserving energy. So when we're doing that subconscious work, within our program, within the Deep Imaginings, just really keeping that in mind. And obviously we teach a bit of this in the section of Unblocked Money. But yeah, that masculine commanding energy. So if you think of the people in your life that are the most successful, they probably have their masculine wits about them. Like even your mom, she was in finance, right? That was her career. Does she have that aspect to her? Like it takes a certain aspect of, I deserve this. I'm in the game. Here I am. Like, I want this. And I need, it's like a hunting energy a little bit for a lack of a better, image. I'll let you talk about the people in your life, that tend to be successful and abundant. Do they have that about them?
So I was really thinking about this energy a lot. And there's been periods of time where I'm like, okay, yes. I can identify it here, here, and here. But I was thinking like, how do I distill it down for someone who's like, I don't know if I have that, or I don't really feel confident in my skill set. And even last year, I really took inventory of where are all the places where I feel like I'm not fully in my masculine worth energy. And one of the ways is, especially in career, looking at all the things that you have done, accomplished, put out into the world, your values, your gifts, your skill set, and actually honoring them for yourself. I am such a like busy next this, and I didn't actually take the time to look at like, wait a second. Let me look how much I have grown over the past year and the skills that feel intangible to me and that I'm really fucking good at that, and really sit with that. This is, I think, part of the masculine worth energy is having such a strong trust muscle in who you are and the value that you provide. And the more that you can bolster that by taking inventory of like what you're good at, where your skill sets are. I remember we had that one financial freedom episode and Grace's mom gave that one piece of advice on have the skill set no matter what. You are good at this one thing and can make money through this one thing. What are those things that you're like, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at connecting people. And it doesn't have to be business related. It could be like, I'm really good at tastemaking and understanding, like finding talent and putting people together. I'm really good at looking at spreadsheets. I'm really good at analyzing data. I'm really good at writing. It could be a million different things, but have that list of things that you're like, I'm really good at that and I'm confident in that. I'm allowed to be confident in that. And that's sort of how you start to bolster that muscle. So when the time comes where you're negotiating a rate or you're having a conversation on a new income portal or calling in a new client, the subconscious belief is like, no, I know what this is worth and I know what this level's at. And you're holding it in, like you were saying, that root chakra place. You're not going to waver or people please or concede to the other person. You're like, no, this is where I'm at right now and I'm confident here.
Yeah, and I mean, even expanding on some of the examples you were giving, even in that episode, they were so helpful because Grace's mom was like, I can be a tennis teacher. I'm really good at tennis, so just for people out there. And then for Grace, it's like, I'll always have graphic design to fall back on. Even though she has so many other skills and she's so developed, that, just kind of sharing with people, it doesn't even have to be business-based at all. Like it could be, just have that one. And I said in the episode, no matter what, if I ever had to like go out and make money again and none of this existed, I could give sessions again. And I'm really fucking good at it. And it would be fine. And I would make well over $200,000 a year doing that alone. So it's like just knowing your thing. And I think I just want to really highlight the thing you said, basically understanding that skill set, the value that you bring is what's going to determine that root chakra energy of being confident and strong and having a trust muscle. So the root chakra thing is you can't fake it. It has to actually happen. The integration has to actually happen. To have a trust muscle, that's a concept we talk about a lot in this work. After you've manifested quite a few things, especially the greater they get through this work, you don't start to doubt it anymore. You're like, oh my God, my trust muscle is so strong. And when your trust muscle gets stronger, the gap at which you need to focus on expanders lessens, right? You don't have to go out and gather as many. Even a fragment can get you there, And so that trust muscle piece in this, that root chakra energy, knowing the value will determine that level of masculine worth energy.
It's really about that I'm valuable. I have something to offer, and that deserves an exchange of skills for money or services for money. And you have value and almost pride in knowing like, no, this is a worthy thing that I'm offering out there that I have to offer in exchange for money. And the other thing I'll say with this is a lot of people right now, at least who are writing in the community, are in between jobs, or they're at a job that they're like, this is absolutely not the thing I want to call in the next thing, or they're actively looking for jobs. And so in that period, I could see that person being like, yeah, it's really easy to say like, oh, I feel confident in this when I'm killing it at my job. But what if I'm like working a job I hate and I want to start a whole new career path that I have no skill sets for? One of the things that I've seen help a lot is think about the other things that might not even be related to career that you're actually good at, so you can start to feel your inner value and self-worth again. So for example, if you are manifesting a certain type of career, you don't necessarily have your skill set there, sure, definitely go out and learn, bolster your skill set there. But maybe you're really good at getting gifts for your friends. Maybe you're like the best gift giver in your group, or you're like the best hostess. Start to host things where you see your value reflected in that way. And that's also going to help deepen that self-worth, that value meter, that trust muscle that you have with yourself. Okay, like there's something I can give back to the community by hosting this dinner or making those gifts or whatever it is.
Yeah. By now, you're starting to get the feel for TBM. Maybe you've heard about our workshops and you're interested in manifestation, but you just don't have the time or energy to sit down and do self-help work. We totally get it. In fact, that's why we created the Daily Practice, which is our massive library of self-hypnosis tracks that you can do anytime without having to jump into a workshop. We call these tracks our Deep Imaginings, or DIs. DIs are different than normal meditations because we designed them using a combination of self-hypnosis techniques, deep theta waves, EMDR-informed tools, and somatic experiencing. A fully loaded formula that is scientifically proven to help you clear your blocks and triggers on a subconscious level, giving you the power to actually create new neural pathways in your brain. So if your boss pisses you off, use our trigger DI. If you want to feel magnetic before a party or an important meeting, use the magnetic self DI. If you're feeling anxious or down on yourself or you need help making a decision, we've got a DI for all of these scenarios and more. You can get full access to the Daily Practice inside the Pathway membership, where you'll also get unlimited access to every workshop, tool, and offering from TBM. The tools in the Pathway membership will support you year-round, whether you're in the worst, a rock bottom, or second worst, a rut, or feeling good and you want to keep the magnetism going. In the Pathway, you'll effectively learn how to become your own manifestation coach, all for less than $1 a day. So even if you're not ready to start a workshop, join the Pathway and start rewriting your neural pathways now to create magnetism. Work through your triggers and get closer to your authentic magnetic self in order to manifest. Use our special code MAGNETIC, all caps, MAGNETIC, to receive $20 off your first TBM purchase. Again, that's all caps, MAGNETIC. Now back to the episode.
Okay, so let's take some questions. I need some advice and clarity, please. I'm unblocking money and struggling to locate how I should approach my blocks. I'm currently coming back to work slowly after a period of time off and a rock bottom. I'm just coming off unemployment. I have sporadic income due to this. The job I have is great, but it's not my authentic code. I am always fine with money, but fear running out. I never have enough to do what I want, like travel and live the comfortable lifestyle. My dad was very poor growing up and lives in poverty and scarcity. My mom actually grew up quite wealthy and she spends a lot of money and they're always arguing over this. Myself and my siblings are always living beyond their means and surviving paycheck to paycheck. I know I overspend because my mom, and I know I have fear and lack because my dad, but how do I approach this? Also, I do not have a strong income as self-employed and have lost a lot of customers during my time off. My goal is to be financially free. What steps should I take?
So with this person, they're like the perfect model of our work. The awareness sounds like it's there, but it doesn't sound like there's a tremendous amount of unblocking or expanding happening. What would you say, Jessica? Because it doesn't sound like they're deep in the actual process yet. It sounds like there's just a tremendous amount of awareness happening and desperation energy.
Yeah, there's a lot of desperation energy. I think getting really clear on authentically what would feel aligned for you. So if you're like, okay, I want a lifestyle that's comfortable, that supports me, where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, And when you go into the unblocking work, start to bring in a magnetic home that had those things, that modeled those things to you, where they interacted with money in that way. Like if you don't have expanders in your real life at this moment in time, like do the expanders DI and just visualize some expanders that are giving you exactly what you want to get there. And then I would also, when it comes to unblocking these things, you want to feel like the pain point of what your fear around that dynamic is, right? Or what the emotional pain was beneath that. So if you're like, okay, well, my dad grew up poor, tons of scarcity. How did that impact you? Were there a lot of scary situations? Were there dynamics where you felt unsafe? Start to examine that emotional landscape and just be like, wow, what did my little child's self feel? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it anger? Do I want to cry? Like process the emotions that are attached to it. And then you can start kind of pulling in that new model, and then even write on your list expanders who are using money in this way, expanders who are able to be self-employed, expanders who are doing this, and just keep pulling at that unblocking thread. There's going to be more emotions there. There's going to be more self-soothing there. There's going to be overriding a new story, all of those things.
I would say for this one, I think the advice you just gave is so perfect for any person who's like diving into money. But if I'm really like taking in what she's writing in particular, I don't even think it's money that she's trying to manifest. The first thing I would be doing with her, I can tell by her energy. If I was in session with, and I'm just starting to get channeling. So if I was in session with this woman, she's seeing money as a potential fix for something greater that's going on. Money is just a symptom of it. Number one, why was I on a rock bottom? Go do the rock bottom workshop. Why did the universe rock? There's something I was calling in, conscious or unconscious, and the universe was like, you know what? You are not figuring this out fast enough. It's orbiting you. I'm going to rock bottom you so that you go through those steps. So if I were her, I would not be in money. I would be in rock bottom to get to the root of that. Like, why was I rock bottomed? What was I calling in? What is it the universe is like shaking me to understand right now? And I know that she's jumping to money because she's feeling scarcity at the moment. Like, I'm not making enough, this could run out. But it's actually not the place she really needs to be. Even like Jessica said, she way more needs to be in something like inner child right now and shadow, in my opinion, to even have the subconscious priming for unblocked money. So for her to even ask, like, this was my mom's dynamic, this was my dad's dynamic, what do I do? It tells me, did she actually do how to manifest an inner child in shadow? I know this energy well because I've had many clients like this energy, and I've been in this situation myself where you're not resourced at the moment financially, and you're like, fuck, I need it to survive. And I'm surrounded in my family by these other people who are reflecting the same thing in different ways. But what she is really, really needing at the moment is to truly understand her authentic self through how to manifest, really dig deeply into inner child and shadow so that she's even getting in touch with her authentic self, her authentic inner child. Because right now, her desperation energy is still scrambling. She doesn't have a sense of that, a root of that, or any primer foundation of that right now. So anybody who doesn't have that and they're in unblocked money, they're just going to feel like they're dog paddling. It's not going to go anywhere. Because to even harness that masculine worth energy we're talking about, it's a level of confidence, And the only way to find that level of confidence is to address your inner child and shadow, so you start to have a sense of worth. Because it sounds like there's quite a bit of sense of subconscious sense of not self-worth. So in fact, in her situation, rock bottom would be where I would start. And I would get back to inner child and shadow, and I would start to prime, who am I? Who is my authenticity? What do I want? Because nowhere in there did she mention, I want to make money from my dream. You know what I mean? So she said, I want financial freedom. But that tells me that's somebody who doesn't know where they want it to come from or why. That's just somebody who's scrambling to make it happen so they feel safe. And you're just never going to manifest from that place. So those are my thoughts listening to that.
So good. So good. I think that's really good too for people out there who they're in that scramble energy, and it's like, get back to your authentic self. And in finding your authentic self, it's like, oh, this is who I am. And when you know this is who I am, that's where that trust muscle comes with your masculine worth energy. That's where it's like, oh, this is who I am, so this is what I can do, or this is what I want to go offer, this is what I want to put out into the world, or whatever it is from that place.
Yeah, there's just so much more to talk about on that, because at the end of the day, this work, the foundation of it is the universe's only intention is to get you back into your authentic, whole, worthy self. Jessica has become successful from following her authentic self's talents, wants, and needs. I have become successful from following my authentic self's talents, wants, and needs. Anyone in my life that I know that is happy financially, some people that are successful, but they're not happy. These are the people that went into careers that didn't light them up, that they were programmed to do, that if they did this, society would love them, they would be safe, they would make their parents happy. Anyone I know that is happy financially and manifesting with ease financially, it's because they're doing it from their authentic self.
So if you guys are starting to really understand, all right, let me look at some of my blocks, my stories, my narrative. How are they impacting me? How are they impacting my self-worth? How I'm operating with money, where I might be pushing money away. Start to think about the 5 to 10 people around you. What are their thoughts around money? How do they speak around money? And then that masculine worth energy. And then in the next episode, we are going to touch on income portals and bridges. So stay tuned for that. We're going to dive even more into money, and enjoy.
Bye, everyone.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today, and I'm going to kind of recap some of the things we covered so you can take this into the real world. So one of the main principles, money flows based on the structure of beliefs that you grew up with, imprinted on your subconscious. What you witness in the people around you, your peers around you, your family around you, your society around you. How much have you shown your subconscious that it can expand beyond the limits of the things that were surrounding you growing up? And what is your level of subconscious self-worth in relation to them? So knowing that, let's cover what we covered today, the money formula. Step 1 is the unblocking process. That is where you're going to take that deep inventory to see what is the blueprint down there about all the things that you picked up around money. Maybe consciously you are really looking to get to that next step in career. You're looking to open the next income portal, and money is just trickling in slowly. You're not able to access it, even though you truly, truly want to. What were those patterns and stories and shame and programming that you picked up as a child that may still be operating, pushing away money to keep you safe, to keep you as part of the community that maybe you are around that you need to start to unblock and expand out of? Then you can use our deep imaginings to start overriding those old neural pathways of limiting beliefs and into high self-worth beliefs. Step 2, the money formula, expand. Who are the people that you spend time around, and what is their relationship to money, success, abundance? Look at those people. If you are sitting around people who are talking about money as if it is a finite resource, you won't be able to access it. Oh my gosh, I have no money to do that, no money to do that. That is not going to help prime you and help you evolve from the state that you're in to the next state you want to be in, which is that money flows easily to you. So again, I always make this disclaimer, but this doesn't mean you have to get rid of all your friends and not have them around, but intentionally curate people that are navigating with money the way that you want to be navigating with money. I get this question a lot. Who are my money expanders? When I first started all of this work, a lot of my money expanders I didn't know. They were people on social media. They were people like Ramit Sethi or Tiffany from The Budgetnista. Like, there were people who I could see operating and using money in a really powerful and empowering way. Now, a lot of my money expanders are the people around me. I see how they open income portals with ease. I see how they talk about their taxes or their businesses. I see how they talk about spending things on their self-care, which has always been such a hard thing for me to do, and seeing how they do it with ease because they know that that generating energy and caring for themselves is coming back tenfold. So who are the people that have that money mindset that you want to adopt? Think about that for expansion. Step 3 is the masculine worth energy, or I like to call also the unapologetic deservingness energy. Now, this cannot be faked. This is something that we talked about in the episode where you really have to feel into that inner strength and that inner value to command it when you're setting boundaries around money. So what this looks like is step one is starting to build the foundation of where you feel empowered in your skill set and in your value, specifically because oftentimes money comes through the portals of jobs or career. So how do you feel more empowered in your skill set, what you have to offer, what your value is in those things? And if you don't have skills in a certain area, how can you build those up so you can start flexing that muscle, building that muscle? Another way to build this is having an FU fund, having money to fall back on. So when you're in that negotiation, if something is not at the level of income that you wanted and you feel expanded and unblocked to ask for it, you can say, okay, I'm going to walk away and say no because I have the FU fund of savings that can help me until I find a spot that's perfectly aligned. And it's interesting, the thing on my notes here for this recording too was that it's almost like you have to simultaneously build the FU fund and the FU skill sets, the skill sets that feel intangible that you can really harness, that when you're setting boundary or asking for a certain income or raising your prices, you can do it from a foundation of confidence because you know that you're really good at those things. That takes time. That will not come overnight, but start cultivating it now and you can get better and better and better at it. And then the final step is opening and closing money portals. Now, this we're going to talk about next week, so be sure to tune in. And this is where we can start to create bridge manifestations with money, where we don't rely on one source to bring us all of the income, but multiple different sources. So start unpacking this stuff. If you are in our Pathway membership, check out the Unblocked Money course. It starts to show you the money formula. These journal prompts are full inventory between the shadow and programming that we picked up around money so we can learn our stories. And let us know what you guys unveil. What are some of the limiting beliefs down there? I'm so curious what comes up for all of you. Be sure to tune in next week and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.